Welcome to TARTLEcast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path.
1, 2, 3, and now the fourth industrial revolution for our giant global world.
The global world. So Davos every year, they didn't have one in 2020, but Davos, Switzerland, all of the peeps that are influential.
Anybody that kind of drives global industry, some people claim them as globalists or whatever it might be, but this is where they go to spitball.
Yeah.
Talk about what's next.
Yeah, and it's called the World Economic Forum, WEF. Their annual meeting, 2019, Davos, Switzerland, was called the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
And there were CEOs, policymakers, industry to describe technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, 3D printing, Internet of Things. And they talked about how companies and government are struggling to keep up.
Yeah, the thing is, technology outpaces people's ability to adapt to it. Hands down. And now the way things are designed and how everything can have such interoperability that the foundation of growth for all of these things is exceeding our ability to just be like, how do I assimilate all this at once? And that leaves us with the concept of Industry 4.0, which we're going to get to in a second, but I think it's important that from a conceptual understanding, we talk about the first industry, primal industry, 2.0, and then 3.0.
Yeah, let's get into the first industrial revolution. That started in Britain around 1760, and it was powered by a major invention, the steam engine. The steam engine enabled new manufacturing processes, leading to the creation of factories.
Yeah, so you got a piston, and this piston requires pressure to drive this thing up and down. And they're called single, double, or triple expansion steam engines. And as you are feeding coal,
right,
which is the fossil fuel that releases all the carbon dioxide, that's when we started to see the peak in our, right? As that's going in there, it's boiling water. Water has a high availability, coal had a high availability, and then we have an engine where if we have a piston moving up and down, it can rotate a gear. And so now this sort of mechanical movement, powered essentially by coal and water to generate that steam, is allowing for human labor to decrease, and now we can start to design machines that rely on this energetic process. And that's when manufacturing really started to take off.
Yeah, and the second industrial revolution came roughly 1 century later and was characterized by mass production in new industries like steel, oil, and electricity. The light bulb, telephone, internal combustion engines were some of the key inventions in that era.
Yeah, so if you look at Industry 1.0, we have steam. We're starting to create gears, apparati, or a certain apparatus. I think that's the word. It naturally transitioned to like, okay, now we've created this thing. How do we make an efficient process? How do we create more? How do we make these machines more efficient? How do we make the people interacting with them have less touch points? How do we assemble more of this material product? Because now we're looking at it like, okay, we can build more, do more. We have electricity. How do we combine these systems together? So we have steam engine, manufacturing gears, ball bearings, and electricity. Okay, and now people are also starting to use, certain types of polycarbonates or like plastics. We have metal, plastic, and then wood, and then you start to see a combination of these things, and whichever one becomes stronger, more resilient, and more cost-effective, that's when we had our natural transition into plastics when it comes to mass manufacturing. And now that has to take an obvious next step. What is then the third step? What is the third part of that evolution?
So the invention of the semiconductor, personal computer, and the internet marked the third industrial revolution starting in the 1960s. This is also referred to as the digital revolution.
This is the digital revolution. So
it started in the 60s. People don't realize that.
We have transitioned from an immensely material world into this digital world. And because of the semiconductor, the ability to process and store information on these pieces of silicon is what it is. These crystallized pieces of silicon allows us to then make the transition as like, okay, now we can look back and begin to learn from ourselves. We can now transmit things without having to move them physically. Just think of an obvious thing, the mail system in the early U.S., Pony Express, first is on horses, then trains. then airplanes, then cars. Now we're sending emails. Even though the post office is still around for material things, I mean, it's made these transitions as industry has developed over time.
And this fourth industrial revolution, we'll get into that. It's different. And here's why they say that it's different. And this is a CNBC article that I'm reading from. What is the fourth industrial revolution? Davos 2019, if anybody wants to get it. The gap between the digital, physical, and biological worlds is shrinking. And technology is changing faster than ever. And they give an example. They were talking about it would took 75 years for 100 million people to get access to the telephone.
Yeah.
A gaming app, Pokemon Go, it took less than a month for 100 million people.
I think it took Pornhub like 48 hours.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
No, I'm like legitimately
Yeah,
serious.
exactly. Yeah. So,
but what is that? What's that akin to? It's akin to access to this electronic technology, is to mass manufacturing of semiconductors. So we're efficient in that process. Now, how can we efficiently give that over to people to decentralize systems that were otherwise centralized and move us into this interconnected digital web of a world that we're all a part of? It's this, if you're a flat earther, this would get you amped up, but it's essentially the flattening of our world in a digital sense, how we're connected.
Even though we don't believe in flat earth.
Yeah, I don't have to believe in it. I know.
I don't want to say if you're a flat earther, people are like, oh.
Yeah.
No.
Screw these guys. No. I'm just saying in a metaphorical sense, flat. And because of all this information being created in the Industry 3.0, the transition into 4.0, the reliance of the growth of 4.0 is strictly going to be based on one thing. And it's fun that we're going to talk about each of these pieces that are in Industry 4.0 that these people in Davos were talking about. And they are all supported fundamentally by data.
And I thought this was interesting. The European Patent Office found the number of patents filed related to the fourth industrial revolution increased a growth rate of 54% in the past 3 years.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Also, JP Morgan client investment strategy, David Stubbs, said this. Stubbs. Technology, and specifically digital technology, is so intertwined with many businesses as well as our social and economic lives that trying to separate, and this is a key. This is really good what he said, and I want you to talk about that. Trying to separate tech from non-tech is becoming increasingly redundant.
Yeah, it is.
There's no such thing as non-tech.
Yeah, there's no non-tech. Every business is now a technology business. And what you find is that if you don't keep up with that, you're frankly, you're going to disappear. You'll cease to exist. Because the reliance of our society is we're completely reliant on like this sort of digital technology. Not technology in the hard sense of like, we create hammers and we're in this, steam engine process, but legitimately a lot of our systems that handle risk, utilities, everything is completely on semiconductors. Yeah,
and his last name is Krieger. Let me get his first name here. I want to make sure we do this right. Oh, they don't have his first name in here. He served as the U.S. State's Department first ever representative to Silicon Valley from 2016 to 2017. He said technology is often missing from policymakers' toolkits. As a result, he said companies are left filling a void trying to understand how to implement and regulate advancements like AI or whatever it may be. And then he said this, there's an absolute hunger for concrete things companies can do. So companies are like, what do we do? How do we react to this?
That's the thing, is all this technology is coming out, and they have not chosen to adapt with it. I saw this in a lot of manufacturing industry. They're in the Stone Age still. And when this new technology comes out, they're like, first of all, no, we don't want to use it. This is our process. But then once they open up to the idea of it, they're like, wow, there's a lot going on here. Where do we start?
Yes.
And then you become over inundated because you got too many Netflix films coming in. And it's like, which one do I choose? So when they're looking for something concrete, what they're saying is they need someone to come in and tell them what they should be doing. Because they're specialists in like printing books, or building railroad track. They're not specialists in analyzing technology that works best for them. So they literally need experts to tell them this is the best thing for you. This is the most concrete thing you need to attack in the most efficient manner.
Yeah, Jordan Morrow, he's the head of data literacy at analytics firm Click. He said
data literacy. Here we go.
He said individuals and companies lack skills like interpreting and analyzing data to successfully compete in the fourth industrial revolution. And then this is really cool. Listen to this. He said, not everyone needs to be a data scientist, but everyone needs to be data literate.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what we're trying to do with the world. That's why we have this podcast. This is why we educate all the time. Being data literate says, I understand where society is right now and how I sit within society. I know how I am currently interacting with how society is evolving, how industry is evolving. Is that clear?
No, that's clear. what I want to get into in the article, though, and I want to kind of steer you a little bit, Alex, if that's fine.
Yeah, I don't have any choice in my life. Steer me.
No, we're driving on this road, and I kind of want to push it back over. Studies show technologies like artificial intelligence will eliminate some jobs, but what they're saying is it's going to create a demand for new jobs and skills.
Yeah.
So whenever they say fourth industrial revolution, they're looking at it as, let me define there. A 2018 report by investment firm UBS, huge investment firm, found billionaires have driven almost 80% of the 40 main breakthrough innovations over the past 4 decades.
Yeah.
So, when we look at that, we have to, I know everybody's worried about, will the truck driver be gone because we have, self-driving trucks. Yet there will be a point of that, but we're also realizing this isn't a revolution, another industrial revolution. It's going to create all kinds of new types of jobs.
New types of jobs. You can't apply your ideas of old industry and say this is what the future industry will look like.
Yes.
It's legitimately evolving. Those old jobs, they might disappear, and like you say, it will create something new. Mm-hmm. You just can't form fit an old job that doesn't work into this new evolved world. It's asking you to evolve with it. Mm-hmm. The question is, are you going to?
And to appease and for people to understand in our comfort and safety that we have, and that we're always so worried about. You take a guy that was working on a railroad. Next thing you know, he's in Henry Ford's factory building a car, and making more money than he made on the railroad.
Oh, and by the way,
having better.
He's learned new tools.
Yes.
He's learned new skills.
Yes,
he's working with these machines. He's repairing the robots instead of him doing the labor of manually doing the car. He's just making sure that the robot, if anything, it decreases the amount of work you have to do in there.
He's on a 3D printer.
You can take more time for yourself now. You can learn more about you.
Yes.
This forces society to find those new skills. It forces us to be more creative. If you weren't taking the responsibility of creativity, it's time for industry to drive it for you, right?
I love that. So let's get into the 4 industrial revolutions.
And they are?
We got into water and steam power,
electric
power, second revolution. Third revolution was automation, computers, digital. Fourth revolution is cyber physical systems.
Cyber physical systems.
And drivers of the 4 industrial revolution is this: increase production capacity, flexibility, improve working capital, cash flow management, improve competitive position, acquire new generation technology, increase operational efficiency, provide the basis for competitive pricing.
Do you know what bums me out? Not one of those things had any sort of benefit for a human being. Read them again, slow.
Increase production capacity, flexibility.
Does that help climate stability or educational access? Does that help human rights?
Improve working capital, cash flow management.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Oh yeah, does that accrue to global peace? What's the next one?
Improve competitive position.
Oh, competition. So competition is naturally a separative thing.
Okay.
And
here's another one: acquire new generation technology.
Oh, acquisition.
Yeah, acquire.
Me. Yeah. Yes, got it.
Increased operational efficiency.
Oh, operational efficiency. So we can acquire things faster.
And then provide the basis for competitive pricing.
Oh, competitive pricing.
Provide the basis for it.
Yeah, it's the basis.
Yeah.
So us doing all these things. Yeah. It's like, how do I create this, kind of false market depending on, all of us, these, small group of companies sharing our technologies with one another.
And then I want to get into...
Does that not bum you out?
Yeah, it bums me out because...
Come on.
I mean, when you think about it, so right now, let's go into the list, and we'll kind of talk in each of these informally. Let's go into the list of all the things that... When we look at this list, I can get excited for humanity.
Yeah.
If it's done right.
If it's used properly.
Robotics.
Yeah.
I can get super excited.
Super cool. Yeah.
It's going to help people. That guy doesn't have to lift that 300-pound... big, huge piece of steel. A robot can do that for them.
Dude, neurotechnology, nanotechnology.
Yeah.
Do I want to see an Iron Man suit? Probably.
Yeah.
I think they use on the infographic an Iron Man face.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and that's funny because it's this was sent to all the billionaires. They love Stark.
All of them want to be Tony Stark.
Yeah, exactly. And then bioinformatics.
Yeah, bioinformatics. Like, how do we look at us?
CRISPR.
We're wearing Whoop.
Yeah.
It's trying to figure out what's going on here, or like, what is it? Yeah, essentially, what does our DNA say? Mm-hmm. What is it telling about us? How do we analyze that?
And then how can we have it in real time speak to us to adapt changes. And when we look in the medical industry and you look at that, it's like, you have toilets that are reading waste and then letting you know right in that moment. Because if you're regular, I mean, I don't mean to be mean here, but if you're using the restroom, those are all data points.
Every single one of those is data
that
points.
toilet could sit there with sensors all around it and say, oh, okay, you're off this, your pH is this,
I just think the focus is wrong here.
Yeah.
Again, it's about driving technology for an economic benefit. That's what it is.
Yes.
And, they may come in with well, look, if we're increasing the economy, it's like, no, it just looks like the people that have the technology will be the ones that will continue to grow. What are the people that don't have it? What are the ones that are affected by the waste of this creation of this technology? It's fantastic that it's all here and you're investing in it, but let's talk about how this accrues to the human being, not the business. And not the conglomerate of businesses, not the syndicate.
I want to talk about nanotechnology and little bugs that can get in people's ears and kill them.
Yeah, and kill them, or in a vaccine. They got a chip injected in me,
Yeah, so, and then next is, so it's bioinformatics, nanotechnology, robotics, mass customization.
Yeah, mass customization. The flexibility of systems now, like, a lot of companies can create one sort of software tool and then repurpose it for so many different things. TARTLE is mass customization of data. That's what it is. If you need a specific data set, well, you customize it to whatever you want. It's completely bespoke. That's just the nature of it. Things should be that flexible in design.
And then the next one is advanced connectivity. And I look at that, we got 5G and we got everything going on. But when I look at that for humanity, and maybe we'll have to do it, I think we should do another episode on taking the fourth revolution and then comparing them with our 7 big problems that the world faces and how that can cure. We'll have to do one on that. I think that would be fun. But advanced connectivity, it's like, okay, let's get connectivity to Africa and some of these other places so they can do e-commerce and business and elevate their life instead of worrying about, are we at 10,000 GB? You know what I mean? Like how fast?
We're at 1 million gigabytes a second, but 99% Africa doesn't have internet. Oh, great. You've increased the speed at which the people already have these things to use them even more, but what about the people that have absolutely zero access?
Yeah, I mean,
they don't need the fastest speed in the world. They're just like, where's the access?
Wouldn't it be cool? I mean, if Comcast turned around and said, hey, for every connection that we establish in Europe, United States, or wherever, we're creating a connection in Africa.
Yeah, for every 100, people that sign up at Comcast, we'll bury a fiber line in some village.
Yeah, exactly. And be able to give them, I mean, how easy is that? Or educational access.
Well, that's why you can just,
because that's what the internet is.
Shout out to Starlink and Tesla.
Yes.
You want to give internet to the globe? Cool. You nailed it. You nailed it. And the more people that begin to use that system, the price has to drop.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go through this list. Some of this, we've already talked about Internet of Things. We've done episodes on that.
Yeah, it's burnt out.
Autonomous vehicles. That's the wave of the future. It's going to take a while. There's so much data that are created in those vehicles. I think a Tesla can create in a minute more data than a preteen can create in a week. So, you got the streams of data, and maybe that may be part of a satellite thing.
Yeah.
3D printing. I like this one, energy storage.
Well, we have batteries. I mean, you got to put the energy somewhere. If you are not, I'll talk about, kind of love conspiracy theorists. If you're not getting 0-point energy from the quantum field, you got to do your mechanical process. You have to store that energy somewhere. In some sort of chemical battery. That's it. Okay. And if you don't increase that, well, then it's going to be a hard time for all these technologies that are reliant on recharging things to have that storage capacity. Tesla cars won't be any better if they don't improve the battery. You can make it as aerodynamic as you want, whatever. But if there's not energy storage and the ability to draw from it efficiently, the car's not going to do more than 250 miles.
Yeah, and then we look at, we've talked about this before, the new ability with nuclear energy, and then, the amount of energy that's stored in a water molecule. I mean, being able to understand that, and then, biologically, could we store energy,
if you can just think about this, splitting an atom has so much energy in it. How many atoms are in one water molecule? Split that thing up. Boom. Huge boom.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the concept of... All right, I've got a sidetrack here. Side note.
This is perfect.
nuclear technology has matched very well the mindset of human beings. We like to split things.
Extract and split.
We like to extract and split. Mm-hmm. We're in a world of putting things into buckets, isolating, right? That separative view, that completely binary view of life. And then you look at fusion technology, which has been so difficult to get into any sort of, public application, because that's a bringing of things together. It probably will never happen until we change our entire other mindset of what unification really means as a race. Mm-hmm. I have to touch on this. You watched a documentary the other night on, alien abductions and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Or, there's a pretty big group of people out right now. They're like, we want disclosure. We want this technology. And I thought about this. We don't even know how to unify each other on the most basic stuff outside of technology. Why would I hand you this sword that can be used for bad or good if you still can't understand the most basic things? Why would I hand you anti-gravity technology if you cannot manage yourselves properly, with just like a handgun? I want to give you something that can float around and, essentially.
So primitive, yeah.
Yeah, our thought process is so primitive, and we're saying, well, give us the high technology, give us unlimited energy storage. When someone hands you a technology like that, there has to be an evolution of consciousness.
Yes.
For making sure that is used for the absolute highest good possible.
And we do that now. I mean, look at how many.
Does that make sense, though?
Yeah, look how many treaties and policies we've had just on nuclear weapons.
Yeah, we're having such a hard time dealing with a nuclear weapon.
Yes.
Like, what if someone gives you, I don't want to say this, but like a photon laser? It's like shooting, it's essentially light, photons. And this thing can cut through whatever it wants. Are you going to use that to elevate the world, through manufacturing or changing of items? Or, are you going to use anti-gravity to make cars work better? Or are you going to do this for, a weaponizing effort? That's the thing. That's why we don't
What's the intent?
That's why the public does not have their hands on the highest technology. Because, frankly, we're not ready to use it.
Yeah, and whether you believe in aliens or not, that's a side point.
That's a side note.
But, I mean, everybody always says this, well, why don't they come down to the White House lawn and introduce themselves and say we're here?
That is a primitive thought process we have.
Well, right there alone, it shows us our monkey brain. Because
why would they go to the White House?
In the whole world.
They think that's where the power sits? Is that the White House?
Yeah.
What a joke.
Yeah, but I mean, whenever they're looking, so if you had a higher conscious, obviously if they got here, they'd have to if they were able to have tech, you got to think about
if they can do interstellar travel, do you think they're really worried about going to war with you?
And then also think about this. If they've got to that level of interstellar travel and that much technology, and they're so far higher than we are,
yeah,
and they didn't blow themselves up in that process,
correct,
their level of consciousness has to be at a level.
Yeah. Last time we made a nuke, pretty sure we were just nuking ourselves.
Tech comes.
Oh, fantastic. We made this wonderful thing, this machine. Let's test it on each other.
So, and why would they have any desire to come here in the first place? I mean, there's just, to them, it's a bunch of archaic monkeys trying to figure it out.
I guess at that point, when you're so constantly developed, it's about learning. It's about, now we've unified on our planet. How do we unify with everyone else? Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool with that. Anything like that is like very non-threatening. But, when we look at high technology industry 4.0, how are we going to use the new tool? How are you going to use the new sword? Is it for good or for bad? In all seriousness, what sort of picture are we going to paint for ourselves? Are we going to really use this technology to evolve human beings, or are we going to use this technology to evolve technology?
And we'll end in this, but this is a sad statement. Here's another one. It says this: highlights of the Global University Alliance, quantitative and qualitative analysis of 1,398 companies from 26 countries across 17 industries by analyzing, what do you think the first word is? By analyzing
profits.
Here it is: investment, performance, current behaviors, patterns, and future intent. Mm-hmm. The future intent I'm good with, but that's the last one.
Why is that the last one? Why is intent the last one? Why is intent not the first driver? Mm-hmm. You cannot have any sort of action without thought first. Thought creates intent. Why is thought the last thing? Why is money before thinking?
That's been our problem.
Why is money before thinking? Money thinking. Like, what is that? I'm telling you, the whole thing needs to be inverted. Industry 4.0 needs to be inverted. Glad all these people at Davos are saying that's great with all this high technology. Where's the investment going? What's our return, right? But what is the actual benefit for human beings and the unification of us in fixing these big 7 problems we have in front of us that we've all created? None of those sound like any sort of direct solve. None of them were even painted in the light of solving those major issues.
No, we're following in the step of our ancestors because we're saying we have this new technology. Now let's profit from it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the 4th time around we've done this.
This is like your focus 4 times in a row. Please.
To be the latest and the greatest, to have it, and we have it, and no one else has it. So we'll be the richest.
Smarten up.
Yeah, we need more billionaires. I mean, at the end of the day, there has to be a level of consciousness that permeates throughout each of these companies and these governments that says our main priority is to help our citizens.
Yeah, we do not need...
Let's elevate our citizens.
Yeah. Jason, we do not need more rich people. We need more people rich in creativity to focus on these things, not to focus on acquisition of some sort of predefined value that society says is beneficial for all.
Yeah, and you brought this off the air, but I want to bring it, and then we'll close because we're 26 minutes on this episode. I knew this was going to be a heavy one.
Yeah.
You mentioned something the other day, and I thought it was so beautiful, and I've been thinking about it constantly for the last 3 or 4 days. You said, "What would possess a person that thinks that this river is sacred in their religion?" And then that same person would walk and throw trash in it.
Yeah.
And I just began to think about that and really begin to think about it. And the more you think about it, and I'm not going to say think about it anymore, but I said it like 10 times. But the more you contemplate on it, that's the problem. It's like we know, all of us know what's good for us.
Yeah.
But the choices that we make daily, the responsibility that we have to make daily, we choose to go for profit.
Yeah.
And we can sit here and we can blame these corporations. We can make fun of these billionaires. We can talk about the World Economic Council, Davos, and say it's all their fault.
It's not their fault.
It's our fault.
We're
the ones throwing the trash in that river.
Yeah. And you want to know why? Because profits it's becoming easier to get that profit. It requires minimal effort, but it takes a little bit extra effort to put that trash where it belongs. It takes a little bit extra, just a sliver more, 1 degree of extra effort to start putting us in the right direction.
Because you may blame these billionaires.
I'm not blaming them.
And yeah, I guess, one mate was at 100 billion and now they're worth 400 billion. You did the same thing. You were getting paid $15 an hour. Now you got a new job and you're paid $25 an hour. What are you doing?
Buying more stuff.
Are you thinking in any of that process how it's going to elevate humanity?
No.
So we're doing the same thing. And it all boils down to each and every one of us taking responsibility for the things that we do consume.
Yeah.
Taking responsibility for those things that we do in our everyday life and stop throwing the damn trash into the river.
Yeah. We're polluting our own river.
And there is a way that each and every one of us, if this world got together and unified, there's a way that we can unify over something that is non-political, it's non-dogmatic, and you've talked about this 1,000 times, and it's something that you've created. How can we, as humanity, not only save ourselves, but collectively get together and change our daily lives?
Yeah. Remember how we talked about economics and then thought, intent? The key is to now use a tool where thought and intent sit up here, and then that trickles down to the economics. I don't want trickle-down economics. I want trickle-down thought. And that thought creates our data, creates our interactions, creates everything we do in this world. That is the focus. And that tool is something that is readily available for anybody across the globe that has access to the internet. Any person. You got a smartphone, computer, tablet, web TV, go ahead. Get on it. and start showing how that data, that thing that you have power over, can be put in the right direction. If you have a piece of plastic you're going to throw in the river, stop. Think about the thought that drove you to get to that point. And share that data about that thought. Share that data about your processes, about your behaviors, what you consume. Because if we can all better understand this as a collective, we can start to take all the pollutants out of that water. We can now bring that river back to a state of what it means to be sacred. Don't tell me it's sacred and it's just plagued full of trash. Nothing sacred about that. Don't be a hypocrite. Okay? Use the tool that's ready for you. It's called TARTLE. It doesn't cost you anything to use it. It's right there for the taking. So you're going to step up and be responsible as a human being, as a collective of human beings, to say, this is where we want to go. This is how we define what our future will look like, not someone else defining it for us.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to TARTLEcast with your hosts Alexander McKegg and Jason Rigby, where humanity steps into the future and source data defines the path. What's your data worth?